What's going on, everybody? Christian Ballard, Ballard Sports Media. I forgot to plug in my microphone, but I know you guys can still hear me, so apologies about that. Actually, let me this bad boy right here. We're gonna plug it up and do this right here. There we go. All right. Today we want to look at the Alabama Crimson Tide in 2023. My Crimson Tide, my team, home team that I pull for. I've been pulling for them since I was maybe 3, 4 years old. I mean, ever since I could talk, I've been saying Roll Tide my whole life. My parents, all that. I mentioned it before. You guys know it. But we're going to take a look at what did this past season first. When we get into what they are coming off of before we get into 2023. Last year, they were the SEC West runner-up behind LSU. They go 11-2, win the Sugar Bowl against Kansas State. This is a season that a lot of teams would kill to have in the SEC. A lot of teams in college football would kill to have it. But the standard of excellence at Alabama is still win the national championship. And they failed to do that. They didn't even make it to the playoffs. Which I guess makes for a disappointing season. However, I will say that, I've seen Alabama in the hard times and the bad times, and honestly, this makes for a pretty good season. I think that Alabama, had some issues with the coaching staff, a couple young players, some injuries here or there that kind of held them back a little bit. And honestly, when you look at it, the two games that they lost, a 3-point game by a field goal at the last second to Tennessee on the road, and on the road at LSU in overtime by 1 point. I mean, you could make a case for them being the best two-loss team out there. Unfortunately, though, two-loss teams don't make the playoff. That just doesn't happen. We haven't seen it, and I don't know if we'll really ever see it unless something happens with the 12-team playoff down the road. So they put Alabama in the Sugar Bowl, and they had a pretty good win, really dominant win for Bryce Young and Will Anderson and company to go out, before the NFL draft. They win 45-20 over the Kansas State Wildcats in New Orleans at Caesars Superdome in the All-State Sugar Bowl on New Year's Eve. That being said, we want to go ahead and get into the 2023 season and take a look at what this team could be this upcoming season. You got A-Day coming up in April. Let's go past that because obviously we know all about teams having their spring games. But you start out with a pretty interesting stretch here. Middle Tennessee. I don't want to downgrade any opponent on this schedule, by the way. Just going to go ahead and put that out there. Middle Tennessee, Texas at USF, which is the start of another home and home. They played Texas last year too, so that's to close out the home and home series. Ole Miss, you get into SEC play at Mississippi State, at Texas A&M, Arkansas, Tennessee. Get a bye week, which I think is perfect timing because they come into an interesting stretch here. LSU at Kentucky. That's our team from the East outside of Tennessee this season. Chattanooga, and then at Auburn for the Iron Bowl. So this is going to be an interesting season. This is going to be interesting for Alabama. I think when you look at it, they're recruiting greatly. They did lose some players like Tommy Brockemeyer, obviously Bryce and Will to the draft. I think Tyler Harrell, I believe I saw earlier today, entered the portal. I could be wrong on that. Maybe I'm getting it mixed up with someone else. They bring a lot in recruiting. It's going to be interesting, I think, to see how the offensive line holds up. I think that's been a key issue. I think defensive consistency has been a key issue. They did bring in the number 2 offensive tackle in this year's class in Caden Proctor. They got a 5-star from Montgomery, Alabama, and James Smith on the defensive side. They got the number 1 safety and Caleb Downs. They got a 5-star in Quay Rusaw. They got Justice Haynes as a 5-star, 5-star running back. I mean, I could go down the list of what they're bringing in on the recruiting trail. It's just incredible. I think it's going to be set up to be a pretty good season where it's playoff or bust. And I know they're supposed to take a step back. And in a way, I think record-wise, they don't take a step back, but I do see some decline. I think in the 8A spring game, we should look for position battles. Who's going to step up to be the lead receivers? We bring back Jermaine Burton, who transferred last season from Georgia. We bring in. I think we should still have Ja'Cory Brooks, Jacoby Boykins, some guys maybe that could step up in the receiver position there. The running back group is interesting, as Roydell Williams is still with the Crimson Tide. He let me see. Him, Jace McClellan, Richard Young, Justice Haynes. Richard Young and Justice Haynes are out of this year's class. There's going to be a loaded receiving battle, a loaded running back battle, defensive position battles. Dallas Turner, I think, could lead the defense. Chris Broswell could potentially lead it too. Deontay Lawson is a defensive tackle, defensive lineman, however you want to put it. Kool-Aid McKinstry in the backfield. There's going to be a lot of different players that Alabama could go to this season on both sides of the ball, but you're going to see those position battles play out on April 22nd. To the season itself, overall, I think it sets up pretty nicely that Alabama, unless something happens with coaching or whatever, because we're losing Pete Golding, by the way, to Ole Miss, still on the defensive coordinator search. Bill O'Brien has not officially left Alabama, but obviously Alabama fans, if you follow them on Twitter and Facebook, they have their own opinions about it. They think that Bill O'Brien should get out of Tuscaloosa. He should be fired. He didn't do a good job with Bryce Young. I kind of agree to an extent. I don't know who we're bringing in. We were going to grab Garrett Riley, or at least I heard rumors, but he's off to Clemson. So that's what's going to make things interesting too, is who does Alabama have as their coordinators to help with all this loaded talent, to help with this experience in play calling. That's what's going to make things interesting. The schedule itself, let's run through it just one more time. Middle Tennessee, Texas, USF on the road. That's a home and home, and I think that's pretty cool. That might be a game. I don't know about going to it this year, but I might look into 2024 if I go to an Alabama game then, if I make it an annual thing to try to make it to one game every year. I might go to USF when they come to Tuscaloosa. That could be something there. Ole Miss at Mississippi State, at Texas A&M. Arkansas could give them a challenge. Haven't looked at them yet. Haven't looked at Tennessee. I know Tennessee loses Hendon Hooker. Joe Milton, does he come back? I know they got a 5-star in Nicholas Omalivia, the 5-star quarterback from California. LSU, Kentucky, Chattanooga, at Auburn. Again, a lot of these teams, this is the second team I'm previewing so far this offseason after Georgia. So haven't really looked into Alabama's opponents. So I don't have much insight for right now. But if I had to make an educated guess on what Alabama would most likely do, I mean, knowing Nick Saban, he's going to have the team motivated. He's going to focus on the process. He wants to be successful. I know there's a lot of rat poison and talk going around about Georgia being the new standard in college football. And maybe for right now they are. Maybe that is the case. But I think that itself, like people want to make fun of Nick Saban and say he doesn't know what to do now and he's in a position like that, yada, yada, yada. But um, honestly, it's it's very interesting because I don't. I'm trying to think of how I want to put this. Um, Nick Saban, he might be getting up there, but he's still Nick Saban. He's not fading too much all at one time. He's still got a little bit of energy left in him. He obviously wants to still be coaching, and he still wants to win. Who doesn't want to win football games? He's still Nick Saban. He's still the GOAT. And Alabama is still Alabama. They might take a step back this year. They might take a step forward. We don't know. Quarterback battle between Jalen Milroe and Ty Simpson. Position battles to watch. Keep an eye on it this offseason, throughout the spring and all throughout the summer and everything. Um, Trap games. I got a few trap games for Alabama. Got to be careful with Texas. I'm not going to downgrade USF, but let's be honest, to Alabama's level and to their extent, that should be a no problem game. Even though it's on the road, it should be no problem for Alabama to beat a non conference opponent like that. Ole Miss, I did not list, but I still would be cautious about Lane Kiffin, Jackson Dart, and what they want to do. At Mississippi State, who's going to be the full time head coach over there? I can't even think of the interim coach. Rest in peace to the Pirate Mike Leach. Could Mississippi State pull an upset? I doubt it. I don't think it's strong enough to where they're a trap game. But I do have Texas A&M. I do have Tennessee. I have LSU and I have Auburn and Texas. Texas brings back a lot in Quinn Ewers and Sarkisian. They got Arch Manning. Just an incredible recruiting class right now. Great offense coming up in 2023 for them. That's why they're on this list. At Texas A&M, I put that there because of a couple years ago, and maybe this down year for them is motivation to where they take a step forward. We'll just have to wait and see. I put Tennessee on the list because it's a rivalry, much like LSU and Auburn. Um, you know, what if Tennessee is still going to be good this year? What if they're going to challenge Georgia for the East? That means come October in the third Saturday game, Alabama might want to be careful. I know it's at Bryant Denny and it's a revenge game, and we know how Alabama favors in revenge games sometimes, but at the same time, shouldn't overlook your rival. Bye week, LSU's a rival. At Kentucky, I don't think that's a trap. I don't see much in Kentucky, especially losing a guy like Will Levis at quarterback to the draft this year. It is at Kroger Field. It's in Lexington, and the SEC is tough on the road. But you got to be realistic here. For Alabama, Kentucky, this isn't basketball, folks. At Auburn, your biggest rival, the biggest rivalry in college ball. The Iron Bowl, and it's at Jordan Hare. Alabama has not favored well there, even though they have won. They did win in 2021, but they lost in 17-19. Go back to 13. Go back in history all the way. Sorry about that. Um, Auburn could be interesting with Hugh Freeze this year and what they're doing. I think they bring back their quarterback, Robbie Ashford. I thought he did pretty good for them last year. I know they struggled. I know Harson's coaching style, not too great. I thought when Cadillac Williams, took over the last couple weeks of the season, I thought I saw a team coming together, which means, I mean, could they possibly catapult a little bit? I'm going to make a bold claim right now. Go ahead and give you my prediction for the Crimson Tide. I'm going to say 11-1. I don't like to predict 12-0 seasons for Alabama or really any team out there. You got to give them at least one loss somewhere if they mess up. I mean, they can run the table, go 12-0. That's no question. I mean, they can do that. But it is hard to do in the SEC. These trap games, Texas, A&M, Tennessee, LSU, and Auburn. I think Texas A&M had a bad season. I think that's going to be tough. The only thing about the Texas game is it is at home for Alabama. It's going to be a home crowd environment, and it's going to be early on. Again, like last year, it is week 2 of the season for the Crimson Tide. Tennessee, that's a revenge game. LSU is a revenge game, both at home for the Crimson Tide. So, what do you make of that? Alabama probably wins those games. That being said, if I do have to give them a loss out of all of these teams, I'm going to go with an 11-1 record, and I'm going to say that loss is probably in the Iron Bowl to Auburn. I hate to say that. That's a sour taste in my mouth. Ugh. But I think Auburn, I think with Hugh Freeze, they're going to have much success, especially on the offensive side of the ball, quarterback, everything like that. I think that they can have great success at Auburn with Hugh Freeze. Look at how they're recruiting right now. Got good commits. They got to step their game up there, but it could be interesting. I mean, Hugh Freeze has SEC experience. Remember, he was at Ole Miss, and he did beat Alabama 2 years in a row. I think 14 and 15. So he's beaten Nick Saban. He knows what it takes to do that. Can he do it at Auburn? Honestly, I think that's possible. Now, it would not surprise me, by the way, if Alabama beats Auburn this year. Don't get it twisted. I'm just saying if I had to give them a loss somewhere, I like Auburn to improve throughout the season. Even if they lose and go below 500 this year and go 5-7 total, or maybe they go right at 500 at 6-6, even if that happens for Auburn, they're going to improve throughout the course of the season. They might lose to Georgia. They might lose to LSU. They might lose to whoever. The Iron Bowl at Jordan-Hare, you give it everything you got, no matter what, and Auburn can give Alabama a game. They almost won in the 4 overtime game in 2021, but Alabama, of course, came through to stay in competition for the West. So that's my assessment of the Crimson Tide for 2023. 11-1 with a loss to Auburn. And again, some trap games they got to be careful for: Texas, Texas A&M, Tennessee, LSU, and then the one loss I'm going to give them at Auburn. And I know what you're saying. Oh, well, Ballard, you're an Alabama fan. You're going to say you're going to lose to your biggest rival this year? I'm not saying it's going to happen. I'm just saying if any of those teams, me personally, I feel like could possibly get Alabama, it's probably Auburn. What if Alabama does set themselves up for the SEC title game with Georgia or whoever comes out of the East, most likely Georgia? What if they're overlooking? I know that's not like Nick Saban. They're going to have some young players, though, that are going to be pumped up because they won the West. You don't think they'll overlook Auburn just a little bit? I don't know. We'll see. Anyway, I love y'all. Jesus loves you. He's got a great plan. Trust and believe that with everything inside of you. And let me know what teams you want to see me preview, even though I do want to put it on the list to preview every Power 5 team this year. Not going by conference necessarily, but we have done Georgia so far to start, and I wanted to go ahead and get my Alabama preview right out of the way. I love y'all. God bless. We'll get out of here. Roll Tide.